Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of the Shed End View podcast. My name is Gareth McCullough.
And I'm McKenzie.
And coming up on this week's show, we've 2 games to talk about as we continued our 100% record following wins against Dergview and Ards. And we look ahead to what is a busy fortnight with games against Queens, Ballinamalard United and Warrenpoint Town. So, firstly, now that we're a brand new YouTube channel, as everybody knows, we want you to make sure you like and subscribe, which we'll put on the screen and in our bio. What we plan to do, if you want to keep up to date with discussions or mini docs or interviews, subscribe and like. And once we hit the massive number of 100 subscribers, we'll do a bit of a giveaway. 100 subscribers might not seem a lot to some people, but it is to us, trust me. Not much has changed since last podcast. We're still winning games. We still got a 100% record. We'll go back to the first of those 2 games since our last episode, which was Dergview away, 2-0 win. We were both there. Ali travelled on the fun bus, the supporters bus, while I brought Newry Aggro, my dad, up in the car. So 2 different experiences there and back, but a very good experience for the 90 minutes while we were at Dergview.
Yeah, it was actually great to get back on the bus as a supporter, and but to get back on the bus and actually travel in the away game felt great again. Of course, as we said the last time, our last ever away game before the lockdown was Dergview, so it was a bit weird going back up there, and passing the point where the wheel came off the bus. That was a wee bit strange. Dodgy roads getting up there at the best of times, but it was great. It was so good to get into the away end again, and you knew you were in Tyrone straight away because they had Nathan Carter playing. Do you remember the speaker just before the game? And we were like, this is when you know you're in Tyrone here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you tweeted, tell me you're in Tyrone without telling me you're in Tyrone, and it was a video of this Marshall speaker off, and the guy playing County and Western, which was a novel way. It's certainly the first time I've heard that at an Irish league ground.
I have to say though, we definitely did Dergview a disservice a few weeks ago.
We did,
yeah, because we kind of mentioned how bad the pitch was, but that was just from the last time we had seen it. It was terrible that night. Also, that was like coming out of the winter freeze and stuff, but it was bobbly. It was a bit all over the place that night. When we came up, it was like a brand new laid pitch. So fair play to them. They fairly turned that around. And from what we heard in the stands was some of their players were talking about the podcast. So with our first episode, we managed to get under the skin of some away players, which is great.
Yeah, we envisaged that beforehand. Dergview had played excerpts of the first episode of our podcast to their players, to get them wound up before the start of the game. And fair enough, if I was looking at my face, I'd probably get wound up too. It didn't really do any good, because if we move on to the match, we won 2-0. Thomas Lockhart scored 2 absolute belters, one with his right foot, which is notoriously weaker foot, and one with his certainly not weak left foot. But we sort of controlled the game. It was one of those ones where it was the first away game of the season. To be honest with you, I was a bit nervous about it, because you were sort of getting into the unknown a wee bit. It was a horrible weather throughout the game. It's just, you didn't know. We've been in such a good run. You sort of, when you're a Newry supporter, as anybody as a Newry supporter will know, you sort of wait for everything to come crashing down around your ears, when things are going well. It went as perfectly as you could. It was a good professional performance. But whatever, if any of the Dergview players are watching this episode, well, you didn't really get that motivated the last time, because we won comfortably. But it was a good day all round, a good comfortable performance.
Yeah, really. Apart from, I think, the first 5 or 10 minutes when they actually played a bit of football, which it was good to see, and they looked comfortable enough on the ball. But other than that, really, our standout player, other than Thomas Lockhart, obviously for his goals, was Moner. Moner was absolutely fantastic, and he has been in the previous few games as well. But he was just super, and he really controlled it. And I think with McGivern in there beside Moner and Engine, those boys are coming on leaps and bounds, and the standard has been set every week now. That's what they kind of have to keep it up to. Engine Darren King, of course, he was fantastic as well along that back line, as was Ryan. So we looked very comfortable. We never once really felt that we were under threat, or I never felt that we were going to be in danger throughout that game, which is, it's not often you can really go to an away game in this league and feel that. Now, they did pose a couple of threats here or there, but nothing that would worry you. But they were tight to break down, and they were a tough enough team, and it took 2 fantastic goals to really to break that deadlock, and that's what it took to win the game. And thankfully, we got the 3 points and got away from there with Nathan Carter bouncing on the bus and the whole way back home.
I think if anybody's seen the footage of the celebration, particularly for the second goal, It was sort of a Shed Envy podcast on a mini tour down the touchline, because Tommy and the players all ran over the slide on the ground, and all you can see, and just there was a couple of wee specks in the distance because of where the camera was. One person overtaking the other, which was Ali overtaking me, and then me overtaking my dad. But he's bear in mind he's 74, you know what I mean? So, but it was quite amusing. You could just see these 3 dots running up the touchline, and all we got was a high five of Noel Healy from it. Which, no disrespect, Noel, I was expecting a bit more from a few of the other boys. But a good day at the office. What that did was then, we knew then going into the Ards game last Friday night that we were going to be sitting top of the league, or joint top certainly with the Ards. So we knew that whoever came out on top of that game was going to go 3 points clear. That was the key thing. You could see the bounce of the players as they were coming out of the change rooms after the game in Dergview. They knew, okay, that sets you up nicely for a week. You also knew Samuel McLevine, who had played superbly well that day and has been very, very good since he's come in. And he's probably grown in every game. We knew he was going to be missing because he got married last Thursday. Which, congratulations, Samuel. And
he's still not forgiven for missing the game on Friday either.
his new wife Lauren, as we stood outside the dressing rooms in Dara Park. He was standing there and said to Darren, Darren, I'm not going to make it. I have a wedding rehearsal on Wednesday night. He says, I'm not going to make it to training. And Darren says, when are you getting married? He says, Thursday. And he says, right, okay, so you'll see you Friday night then. And Studsley just sort of paused for a second and said, I'll be in the locker room, Darren. And he's like, that's no excuse. You know what I mean? So this is the standards we're setting here. You know what I mean? You can't just drop in there to the team to get married and things like that. There's not much of an excuse. But congratulations to the pair of you. What it did, setting us up for Friday night, which was a massive game, massive attendance. I said to somebody about 5 minutes in that it felt like the Carrick playoff game, which is ridiculous because it's 5 games into the season, but it felt like just. There was something different about it. There was a bit of atmosphere about it. There was a bit of tension about it. And you thought the first half, this is going to be one of those nights, but all turned out well in the end.
Yeah, it did. When you said the Carrick game, I likened it to Donegal Celtic game that was down here. I think it was in April 2017. I think around about then when we were playing them, and it was kind of towards the end of the season, and they were 2-0 up on us, and we came back to 2-2. And I just remember the atmosphere that night was electric, and it felt a wee bit like that the other night. Backs to the wall. Can the boys pull out a performance? And I know we are only 5 games into the season, and realistically anything can happen from here, but I think the fact that we were top of the table, it gives the boys that little bit of pride. They don't want to lose that, and going into that game, that's what was on the line. To take a boxing term, somebody's had to go on Friday night, and I think we were super. To come away with a result like that, probably before the game you would have taken a draw. Realistically, people were talking about it. I said I wanted to win. I think we had to win. Ards will be a tough enough place to go throughout the season. Take all the points that you can get at the minute. And in the wee mini doc that I was shooting that was released today, Darren says in it, we never get beat at the showgrounds. And I think that's the saying for the season here. And it has to become a fortress, as much as a footballing cliche that is. But if we have the crowds like we have and the atmosphere that we had the other night, I think it'll be very tough to beat us here.
Well, it's something that we've never really had. We've probably our last full season, or 3/4 of a season before it was cut short 2 seasons ago. Our home record was poor for a team that wants to be challenged at the top of the table. It was poor. Yes, it's a cliche, but as we said probably last week, cliches are there for a reason. We do need to make this place a fortress. The fact that we have 4 of our first 5 games at home, we've won them all. There's been good attendances at them all. People come down to watch your team whenever you're winning games. Doesn't matter what level you're at. So if we can keep that going, it keeps the crowds going. That we would like to think benefits the players and benefits the club in general, and creates that sort of atmosphere where it's an atmosphere of sort of expectation. So the players. It's not a weight of pressure, but it's a weight of expectation. They'll have that expectation themselves, where they know that nobody has beaten us here, nobody's taken a point off us here so far. Looking at the game itself, we think you touched on it. Is shock their left back had given away a free kick. One of the main sort of a running theme it seemed to be of the Ards game, where I suppose the nicest way of putting it are some of the crude challenges that went in. look, we're not averse to one of our own players, sticking the boot in and kicking somebody, or making sure he knows they're there, by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the tackles, if you've seen the highlights, left a lot to be desired. To be quite frank, I'm surprised Ards ended up with a full complement of players on the pitch. The one particular challenge on James Teelan, right in front of the dugouts, which caused a bit of a melee before half time. It was just, there was no attempt to play the ball. There was 3 or 4 challenges like that. The good thing, I suppose, from our perspective, is that it didn't we didn't react to it in terms of trying to do the same thing back.
Yeah.
We didn't fall for it. The positive aspect of it was that we sort of brushed it off and stood up to it without getting involved, and just end up playing more and more of the football, which was key. And it was good to see that it didn't sort of throw us off what we were trying to do.
No, and I think here's the thing as well, is like, if you lose a game like that on Friday night 1-0 and you're kicked all over the park, you could be sore and you can come on and talk about it and say, oh, we were kicked all over the park. I think it's important whenever you win games is to highlight things like that, because do you know what, like, their tactics, and you can see why they were unbeaten and why they won their first 4 games. They're set up reasonably well. They're tough to kind of get behind. I know Teelan kind of ripped that left back apart down this side, but they are tough to break down. You're not going to get many chances against them. And the way their physicality all across the pitch would put off a lot of teams, I think, particularly a lot of the younger players maybe in the league that wouldn't really stand up to that, whereas we did stand up to it, but we didn't fall and start playing their game. And Damien McCurry said that to me as well. He was like, the one thing we can't do is let them drag us down to their level. And late in the first half, we started punching the ball long, and Damien was saying we can't play their game. And the second half, we came out, Darren changed the shape, we started playing football again, and then that's when they kind of, I think they lost all composure that they did have. But yeah, you can see why they are tough to beat. But teams like that, I think, if you stand up to them, eventually you can show the chinks in the armour, and we did the other night. And I don't know what that does for confidence of a team like that. If they only kind of know that way to play and it didn't work for them, what are they going to do in their next game? Yeah,
it was disappointing, because Ards are a good football side. They're a good club, a lot of good people around the club, but they've always been known for being a good footballing side, and I don't know what, it was just a bit, they seemed to nearly be too up for the game, if that makes any sense. Now this could come back to bite us when we go and play them up there, but the important thing was to get out with the win. You're 3 points clear, lock all, then go and get beaten by Institute on Saturday evening,
which was probably the shock of the weekend.
It's probably the shock of the season nearly so far. So it means we're 6 clear of them, so there's a bit of a gap developing already, but it's up to us. So on that, we obviously have Queens away this Saturday. We played them twice in sort of not pre-season friendlies, but sort of friendlies in about May. One, we beat them here, and then we lost away, I think. We've a much changed squad from then. We'll be going into it as massive favourites. We'll be going into probably every game in the league this season as favourites, or expected to win. As Darren said after the game on Friday night, we'll now be seen as a scalp. The crucial thing, and we talked about this after or during the last podcast, it's in our own hands. We can't turn. The worst thing you can do is pull out a big win like we did against Ards, and like we did against Dergview as well, and go into what is regarded as an easier fixture and not put a shift in. I mean, that's all that matters, really. Yeah,
I don't think this team has it in them not to put a shift in, to be honest. I think, like we said, there's enough balance of youth and experience there, but also the standards have been brought up. And I know I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when I said we were kind of catching up to the level that we were at over the past few years, because we got into the Premier Intermediate, got promoted into the Championship and got promoted. So we never really had time to settle in that league, but we've been in this league for a few years now, and we know what it's going to take, and Darren has built a squad of Championship quality that will get us out of there. So I generally think we don't have, like, I'm not saying we won't have an off day, because that can happen to any team, and it could happen to us on Saturday, who knows, but I always think the minimum that this team can do is give 100% on the pitch, and that's all we can ask for them. I think if we go to Queens at the weekend, and Queens haven't had a good start to the season, we would be expected to win, but it's like everything, who knows what could happen on the day, but I'm confident that we could go to Queens at the weekend and come away with 3 points.
So confident, and you sort of said that a bit sheepishly, whereas the last podcast you said, what I think of the quote was, we're going to walk it. You know what I mean? So and that was the entire league. That wasn't
clickbait. That was just clickbait.
All right. So are you backtracking that?
No. I'm still 100% confident that we'll win the league. Okay. Particularly after Friday night, and I think I'll be even more confident come Saturday when when hopefully all the results go our way again.
And following off from that, we'll just touch on quickly. We've got Ballymallard the following Saturday, and then Warrenpoint in the League Cup here at the Showgrounds on the 14th of September. I mean, I suppose the cliche again that we take one game at a time and we can't look past the Queen's game. I think that's the worst thing you can do, is start preparing 2 or 3 games in advance.
Oh, definitely. But I think we can look forward to those games because they are going to be big games. But of course, Queen's has to be the priority. I think as fans we can look past them. It's Darren's job to get the team focused on the game this weekend, but we can look forward to Ballymallard. To me, that's an exciting game. When we travelled up there a couple of years ago and they came down here, it was 4 good games that we had between us. So I think that's an exciting fixture. And Warrenpoint here in a cup guarantees a massive crowd. It's the midweek, so we're going to get the Caribbean League crowd down. All those boys that usually play football at the weekends. What's not to be excited about, particularly after we beat them in pre-season. And like you said with Queens, you can't read into pre-season too much, but that might just give our players that little boost, knowing that we can get one over them.
So that wraps up part 1 of episode 2. Stay tuned for our player interview in part 2 of this week's Shed End View podcast.